Many Hollow Knight players wonder which charms are the best in the game. While many have given their personal opinions on which charms are good and bad, here's my opinion on what the top 10 are. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Starting off at number 10, we have Mark of Pride. It's a pretty solid charm that increases the nail's length by a significant amount. It can also be attained pretty early on, making it pretty good. The reason why it's so low on this list though is because it's basically just a crutch. If you get used to this charm and you take it off, you're gonna have a pretty hard time. Number 9 is a charm that is pretty good, but not great. Some might find it grotesque that it's even on here, but I think Grub Song is genuinely not a bad charm. It gives a generous 15 soul every time you take damage, which, for reference, is about half a spell's worth. Its gentle charm cost can make it fit well within many builds. It might not be the most grand charm, but the green little grub charm can still be useful even for good players. Just don't use it in hitless runs for obvious reasons. The 8th charm on this list is a bit underrated, but Unbreakable Heart is a pretty useful charm. It's not my go-to charm if I have 2 notches left, but it can still help. Basically, it just gives the player 2 extra masks. Although some might say, just don't take damage, but come on. You're not Hot Hustle or Fireborn or something, or, well, unless you are, in which case this part doesn't actually apply to you. Taking damage is basically inevitable, so this charm could be the difference between survival and having to restart P5 for the 7th time. However, this charm is still kind of a crutch. It's not as bad of a crutch as Mark of Pride, since it will only really be useful if you get down to 2 health. Also, there are better alternatives to this charm that will be discussed later on. Plus, it costs 12,000 Geo to make it unbreakable, and unless you're in the Dream Realm, it will break upon death. But if you do take constant damage, here's some advice. Get good, noob. Lol.
What the dog doing?
Or just a quick focus. Quick focus deserves spot number 7 because it not only allows you to heal more during staggers and other healing windows, but it also creates new healing windows, and therefore it changes some of the boss's strategies, which makes things more interesting. Plus, it serves well as just general convenience. But like almost every charm I discussed previously, it's basically another crutch. Although, it at least isn't just a crutch, as it creates some more interesting strategies, so it gains bonus points for that. Plus, it can be tamed pretty early, as you only need dash and 800 Geo to get it, not 12,000. Although, it does have somewhat of a hefty cost, and there are several better 3-cost charms. Speaking of 3-cost charms, number 6 goes to Nailmaster's Glory. Ignoring the fact that segue made absolutely no sense, Nailmaster's Glory decreases the time it takes to charge up nail arts. Most players don't find nail arts to be too useful, so they don't use this charm at all. But they can be useful in some situations, and this charm just makes them a lot easier and better to use. Take the Markov fight, for example. I always found that the dash slash really shines in this fight, since it not only goes through Markov's shield, but it also helps you keep your distance. Nail arts are also very good in the Colosseum, as you can deal lots if not lethal amounts of damage to enemies if they spawn in. Some might argue that nail arts are situational, and they are, but I think the low cost of the charm at least somewhat justifies its use. Plus, it fits well into many builds. But now, it's time for the top 5 charms. Remember when I said there were better alternatives to Unbreakable Heart? Well, I only had one alternative in mind, and that is Spell Twister. It's a 2-cost charm that can be found decently early. All it does is decrease the cost for spells from 33 to 24. Since the player can hold 99 soul without Vessel Fragments, the player can hold an extra spell. To newer players, this might not mean much. I mean, come on, who wants to do math? Ugh. But trust me, it's powerful. Spells are already strong, so why not equip the charm that gives you more of them? Spells with Spell Twister cost only 24 soul. 24 divided by 6 is 4, which brings me to charm number 4, Steady Body. While this charm is also a crutch, unlike all the other crutches, it's so surprisingly strong that it's worth it. For the cost of 1 notch, it removes knockback from hitting enemies with left and right nail swings. While this might seem like it's only for noobs, it actually makes it a lot easier to chase bosses while constantly swinging at them. Combine this with Quick Slash, Strength, and Fury, and Hornet 1 can barely try attacking you. The only main downside to this charm is its crutch-like fashion, which can definitely stab you in the back when doing charm binding. But I'll admit, when I first started playing the game, I immediately discounted this charm saying, I've gotten used to the knockback already, what's the point in relearning my muscle memory? I didn't realize that this charm has an actual use other than a preference. I first learned this when I saw Pantheon speedrunners and Hitless P5 players use this. So if you're up for it, try learning to use this charm, and if you're dedicated enough, get good both with and without it. With and without it. With and without you is a song by U2. It sucks that I'm talking about charm number 3 next and not number 2, as that would have been a better segue, but whatever. Quick Slash is a 3-notch charm that makes you attack faster. Like, a lot faster. It's like comparing an F1 race car to a fighter jet. Holy crap, this charm is good. Like I mentioned earlier, getting steady body, strength, and fury can absolutely destroy bosses. But if you aren't an insane person like me who uses meta strategies to speedrun Pantheons, feel free to omit using fury. It still does tons of damage without it. The only main downside to this charm is that with some bosses, you can't always take full advantage of this attack speed bonus. But if you play smart and well enough, this won't be too bad of an issue, as the positives far outweigh the negatives. Speaking of F1 cars and things outweighing each other, your mom easily outweighs the 1,631 pound weight of your average F1 car, and she weighs at least 2,000 pounds. Oh yeah, that reminds me, charm number 2 was Unbreakable Strength. It's so good I couldn't help myself but talk about it earlier. It increases nail damage by a whopping 50%, which, if it wasn't obvious, that's a lot. For reference, the pure nail does 21 damage, and with this charm, it's 31. The only main drawback is that it costs 15,000 Geo, which is even more than Unbreakable Heart. This is somewhat justified, since this charm mostly shines in the late game when you have so much Geo that you could basically buy the entire kingdom. And besides, even if you somehow had this charm, or maybe the fragile variant in the early game, it wouldn't do much, since with the old nail, it only increases damage by 2. Basically, this charm is cracked in the Pantheons, so it's basically just a must-have. And now, it's time for charm number 1. It's a 3-cost charm that you can get very early on. It's very powerful and very worth the 220 Geo cost. If you're a Hollow Knight veteran, you already know that I'm talking about Shaman Stone. Depending on which spell you use, it increases spell damage by 33% to 51%. It also increases all spell sizes, making spells even easier to use. Plus, it can make double hits with Shade Soul not only easier to get, but also able to deal a lot more damage. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm referring to how you can hit a boss multiple times with just one Shade Soul if the enemy moves in the same direction, either because of its attack pattern or because of knockback. But anyways, in the early game when you get this charm, it's extra powerful since it makes Vengeful Spirit deal 4 times as much damage as the old nail instead of only 3. If you couldn't tell, that's absolutely huge. If you thought the bonus from Unbreakable Strength was huge, think again. If you're wondering what gives it the maximum amount of damage, it's the Bit Shriek with Shaman Stone at 120 damage, assuming you land all 4 Shriek hits. That's almost 5 times as much as Pure Nail. There is, however, only one downside. If you're using the Steady Body Strength through a quick slash combo that I talked about earlier, it can kill things faster than with using spells. But for casual players, this is an absolute must-have. Even the any percent category uses this, and that category basically gets nothing in terms of skills and other cool things. So now you've endured through my ramblings about bug game charms and my terrible segues. Now, if you want to, you can put your personal rankings in the comments. It'll be interesting to see what you guys think. Stay tuned to see more Hollow Knight videos, as well as comparisons between the weight of very large aircrafts and your mom.